Trig turned and looked up at the figure standing in front of him.
You!
It was a piggy-eyed guard whose name he didn't remember, peering back at him through a pair of tinted, decidedly non-regulation optic shields.
What are you doing all the way back here?
Trig tried to answer, but found his reply lodged somewhere just beneath his gullet. Cale stepped in, offering an easy, disarming smile. "Just walking, sir,"
Was I talking to you, convict?
the guard said, and without waiting for an answer, pivoted his attention back to Trig.
Well?
"He's right, sir," Trig said. "We were just walking."
What? You're too good to move along with the rest of the scum?
"We try to avoid scum whenever possible," Trig said, and then added, "Sir." The guard's eyes slitted behind the lenses.
You yanking me, convict?
"No, sir."
Was the last minute they yanked me's doing a month in the hole.
"Understood, sir." The guard glowered at him, twitching his head slightly to one side as if searching out some kind of angle at which Trig's unblemished teenage face might somehow become threatening, or even make sense. Amid this larger mass of incarcerated criminals, watching his expressions, Trig punished himself by imagining a glimmer of recognition in those squinty eyes, and for an instant, he thought how bizarre it might be if the guard had said,
You're the Longo's boys, aren't you? I heard what happened to your father. He was a good man.
But of course no guard on this barge thought Longo had been a good man, or even bothered to learn his name, and now he was dead, and already so completely forgotten that he might as well have never lived. The guard just shook his head.
Move along,
The guard muttered, and walked away. The moment they were out of earshot, Cale elbowed Trig in the shoulder. "We try to avoid scum whenever possible?" A tiny grin dimpled the corners of Cale's mouth. "What? Did you just make that up on the spot?" Trig was unable to retain a smile of his own. It felt liberating, probably because he couldn't remember the last time he allowed himself anything less than a troubled grimace. "You think he bought it?" "I think you almost bought it." Cale reached up without looking and tousled his fingers through Trig's hair. "Keep smarting off like that, convict, and you will be down in solitary with the real dangerous types." "I hear there's a couple of hard guys down there locked up tight," Trig said. "Could be our future customers." Cale favored him with a glance of approval. "You've got a lot more dad in you than I thought," he said, and with one last look at the prisoners in front of them, nodded ever so slightly to the left. "Come on, follow me, and don't get crazy, okay?" "Sure." Trig sensed Cale slowing his pace, dropping back several strides, scarcely enough to be noticed, and adjusted his step to match his brother's. Up ahead, the main concourse broke off into three prongs, branching off into a series of lesser thoroughways that crisscrossed the detention level at every imaginable vector and angle. During his time aboard, Trig had made it his business to learn as much about the purge's layout as possible. Eavesdropping on conversations between guards and maintenance droids, he learned early on that there were 6 main detention levels, each one housing about 20 to 30 individual holding cells. Above that was the mess hall, followed by the admin offices, prison staff quarters, and the infirmary. No one talked much about solitary down at the bottom of the barge, nor was there any speculation about the literally hundreds of meters of narrow access routes and sublevels, and the dimly lit concourses that honeycombed every level. Falling into single file, Cale and Trig slipped through an open gateway, striding along the damp prefab walls, down a flight of steps, deeper in the jaundiced subcutaneous bowels of Gen Pop. The air immediately became thicker, darker, and dramatically less breathable, on its way to an array of refurbished air scrubbers before circulating back through the barge. A voice said. Trig caught a quick breath, hoping it didn't sound like a gasp. In front of him, Kale froze, instinctively extending a hand behind him, and both of them peered into the open space that made up their immediate future. It took no extra time for Trig's vision to adjust. He could already make out the forms of several inmates, all members of the Delphinian Face Gang, and in front of them, or Miss. Whether Miss's nearly vertical sneer was a genetic accident or the result of one of his legendary knife fights was a matter of perpetual speculation among the other inmates. Below the flattened, skewed accordion of his nose, a row of mismatched tribal piercings dangled from the drooping lower lip. Collected like trophies from all the other crew leaders, while Miss and his boss, Sixtus Cleft, had slowly consolidated the Face Gang's position as the Purge's preeminent prison crew.
You're right on time,
Miss said, piercings jingling as he spoke. Kale nodded. We're always prompt.
An admirable trait for a prison rat.
That's why you chose to do business with us,
One of many reasons,
Miss said.
I'm sure.
Did you bring the payment?
Oh, yes.
Miss produced a sibilant gurgle that might have been laughter, and extended one spade-clawed hand, pointing down at the empty floor in front of him.
It's right there in front of you. Don't you see it?
Trig sensed, or perhaps only imagined, his older brother stiffening, preparing for trouble, and wheeled Kale to stay calm. It apparently worked, for the time being at least. Kale kept his posture erect, and didn't look away, careful to keep his own voice steady and calm. Is this some kind of a joke? Perhaps. Miss looked at the other Delphinian foot soldiers, standing on either side of him, grinning and sniggering.
Maybe you just don't share our sense of humor.
Our deal was Sixtus.
Sixtus is dead.
Kale stared at him. What?
A terrible tragedy.
Miss was almost whispering, and the mushy sibilance in between words Trig realized was definitely laughter, accompanied by the faint metallic jingle of the piercings.
I see old Wembley found him in his cell this morning, with his throat slashed. I'm the new skipper now.
He stopped, and then his voice abruptly frosted over.
And alas, the terms of our deal have changed.
You can't do that! Trig cut in, unable to hold back any longer. Sixtus and our dad! No, it's all right, Kale said, still not taking his eyes off Miss. And when he spoke again, he sounded absolutely calm. I'm just sorry things worked out this way. Miss appeared genuinely curious.
Oh?
None of this is necessary. Kale's voice was so casual. It was almost like listening to their father talk. That same mellifluous, we can work this out inflection that had gotten them out of so many dicey exchanges in the past. We've built a mutually beneficial relationship here, and it's crazy to jeopardize it with rash decisions.
Rash decision?
Kale waved a hand in the air. Of course, we'll be happy to tell you where the blasters and power packs are hidden, free of charge. Take them with my compliments. Consider it my gift to you as the new leader of the Face Gang. And everyone walks out of here to do business another day.
What a generous proposal.
Miss seemed to consider the idea for a long moment.
There's only one problem.
What's that? Miss glanced at the Delphinian inmates slathering next to him on either side.
I already promised my men that they could kill you.
I see. Kale hoved up a dramatic sigh. In that case, I guess we don't have a deal, huh?
No.
I suppose there's only one thing left to do. Ormis tilted his chin upwards slightly.
And that would be?
At first, none of them moved, and Trig had no idea what was going to happen next. Then, before he realized it, Kale's hand blurred forward, moving faster than Trig could even see, his fingers hooking down to rip the piercings out of Mrs. face. The Delphanian shrieked in its surprise and pain, and one of his hands flew up to cover his wounded, spurting lips and nose. Simultaneously, the two inmates who had been flanking him burst forward in a rush, and Kale grabbed his brother's shoulder, spun him hard around, and thrust him back in the direction they'd come. "Run!" Kale shouted. Trig first, Kale behind him, with them flying back up the corridor they just came down. Behind them, the Delphanians' boots clanged off the metal floor, and Trig could hear them shouting, coming closer. There was no way he and his brother could possibly outrun them, and even by some quirk of fate, they did escape, or Miss would be waiting for them tomorrow, and the next day. And, rounding the bend, Trig almost collided with a guard standing directly in front of him. The ICO put up both hands in a reflective warding off gesture, and the sudden stop that kept Trig from slamming into him was followed an instant later by Kale hitting him from behind. "What's going on here?" the guard asked. "Nothing, sir. We just..." Trig started, and it occurred to him that there was no reason why the guards should be this far down the walkways to begin with. And then, between the pounding rhythm of his own heart, he realized something. The purge had fallen absolutely silent. The vibrations that had unsettled him, broadcasting their emanations through the bones of his feet, ankles, and knees, had gone completely still. For the first time since he'd come aboard, the engines had stopped.